Welcome to Paperweights, the podcast where two self-proclaimed gym rats and shooting enthusiasts delve into the world of literature with a sprinkle of humor. Although their biceps could crush a walnut, don't let that intimidate you. They also have a nerdy side. Mike and Brandon have a voracious appetite for reading, particularly in the fantasy genre, and they want to share their passion with you. So grab your protein shake and your favorite novel and join us for a humorous and insightful journey into the world of books with Paperweights.
Welcome back to another episode of the Paperweights. I am Brandon and Mike is off today, but today I am joined with my good friend Justin Broadbent. Say hello, Justin.
Hello, how are y'all? Nice to have me.
Justin has been my friend for 15, 16 years, maybe 17 years.
Yeah, early 2000s, huh?
Yeah. Went to college together, and we I remember we used to skip class sometimes and go watch some terrible B movies in the theaters.
Yeah. Maybe not the smartest idea, but it was fun.
Yeah, hey, we both graduated, so
It's true.
All right, so I have a few icebreaker questions here, just kind of open up the conversation. The first one will be, what fantasy or book world would you choose to replace reality?
So it would have to be so it wouldn't be like Wheel of Time, because people die in there all the time. It would really suck to live there. Nor would it be Game of Thrones, because for the same thing. I'm trying to think of like for going sci-fi, it would be Star Trek, of course, because it's utopia. Fantasy-wise, probably. See, the problem with fantasy is the world's ending. So, maybe Way of Kings. That's a pretty cool, interesting society to live in. So it'd be very different, and you get that interesting magic system.
Okay, so with that one, all right. So you answered the question, what draws you to the world, which would be the magic system and the society itself. What power would you hope to have in that world?
I need to finish the Way of Kings stuff, but like Kaladin's like being able to fly and all the crazy shit he can do. Also, the girl that eats has like no friction. She's really cool. So either one of those.
Okay, yeah, I like that. She had her own little novella, didn't she?
I have it, but I haven't read it yet.
Yeah, I think it was.
I need to catch up with my Sanderson.
It wasn't Dawn Shard. It was. So he wrote two novellas in that same world, and the second one was Dawn Shard, which the main character was that little dragon type creature. I haven't read that one. I did read the other one, but those are all with Sanderson's writings. There's little off pieces. They always throw me for a loop at the beginning of it, because it's almost like starting a new book, because you're just like thrust into something that's so foreign, and you're like, this has no connection to anything. But it's still amazing how his mind works that way.
Oh yeah. Like I tried to get into the book, but like I guess I wasn't in the right mindset, and it wasn't that long, so I was like, I'm gonna pick it up later, and I just haven't so far.
Yeah, I end up doing that. But speaking of Sanderson, I actually read. I completed Tress of the Emerald Sea, which was the first of his secret project novels, and
yeah, I loved it.
I read it in 5 days.
Oh, nice.
And it's about 500 pages, so I averaged close to 100 pages a day. It's a fun book. It has a lot of connections to the Cosmere, and so like you can enjoy the book and understand the story in the book without understanding the Cosmere. But understanding the Cosmere puts a whole lot of extra little nuggets in there, like, oh, hey, oh, that's cool. And then you start to you could actually start to understand a little more. For me, anyway, with this book, I understood more of the Cosmere and like the interactions between the different worlds and people that hop between those worlds in the Cosmere.
Yeah, I really need to get back to the Cosmere. Like, I've taken a pretty lengthy break from Sanderson, so I might want to like just reread Way of Kings and all that, and the secret books and stuff that have come out.
Yeah, I think right now for my personal reading, I'm going to go through the Secret Project books. I started reading the second one today, which was the Frugal Wizard's Handbook for Surviving Medieval England.
Yeah, I got them all. Like right over here.
And that one is a standalone. It's not related to the Cosmere.
This one? Right
Yeah. Yeah, I really love these the Kickstarter versions of the books.
Really cool.
Yeah, once you open them, like the artwork inside of it is pretty awesome too.
Yeah,
And
I'm definitely looking forward to getting to them. I'm just making my way through other stuff first, and I'm kind of had a little bit of a lull in my reading right now.
yeah, I had just finished up at the beginning of the month. I finished up my reread of The Wheel of Time, which I knew you did as well. So
Yeah.
it's a long ass series.
Come on. I'd say for the most part it's worth it.
Yeah, I mean, I was averaging a book every 30 to 45 days.
Yeah. I think my first, because I initially was reading them as they came out, and like around like 9 or 10, I like basically was like, I'm gonna just not read these until they're all done. So then when they were all done, it took me, I think, like a year and a half to read them all. And I started my full read of it.
Yeah, that's about how long it took me for my recent reread through it. So next question I have is, who are 3 of your favorite authors?
Okay, so it would definitely be, I mean, it'd have to be for, the influence and how much of the series would be Robert Jordan and Sanderson. They're simple. I just go favorite Jordan. It would be Shadow Rising. It's easily the best book in the Wheel of Time. Sanderson, I really like the first era of Mistborn. I mean, Way of King stuff is good too, but for my money, I think that's my favorite of his stuff. Third is a little tricky. Like, you ask me, like, early 2000s or stuff, it would be George R.R. Martin, but I still think those first 3 Game of Thrones books are like some of the best I've ever read, but tailed off dramatically. I'll throw your audience a weird one that they might not expect. I really like Sarah J. Maas. She's not a good author per se, but her books are so easy to read and fun. They're like comfort food. If like you just need like, I'm just gonna read pretty dumb fantasy, I recommend her.
And and you said her name was Sarah Jane Maas?
Yeah.
Okay, and does she write one universe, or is it?
She has a couple. Her probably most known would be like the Throne of Glass series. She's very like YA. Pretty typical like genre stuff. Like, there's a young girl and then she has like secret past and blah 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 blah. But she's like an assassin and overpowered and stuff. I don't know. Like C.S. Freeman as well. Like, she would be my like correct answer as my third, because I love all of her books. But just if you want some dumb kind of fun fantasy, check out her, Sarah J. Maas.
Okay. So what outside of the favorite authors? So it could be anybody. Doesn't have to be within your favorite authors. What are 3 of your top books?
Top books. I'll just go standalone novels, or pretty close. I think probably one of my favorites, and y'all have done it on your podcast, would be In Conquest Born.
Thank you for that recommendation, by the way.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's really weird. Just love it. I really love I Am Legend, the horror book by Richard Matheson, which is like the vampires. If you like the Will Smith movie, read the real book. It's like 200 pages. It's super good. Third, it might not be right now my favorite, but I'm going through it right now, is War and Peace. And it's pretty good so far. It's not fancy or anything. It's pretty dense, but it's good.
Isn't that book like 1,600 pages or something?
Yeah, it's basically like a 1.5 Wheel of Time books.
How many pages are you in?
I'm like 60 pages in it. But other stuff, the thing is, like, most fantasy don't do like standalone stuff. So if we're doing from like my favorite series, it would be like Shadow Rising is really good. I really like other books from C.S. Friedman, like Madness Season, which is
that one was really good. It's
a
very unique book.
Yeah, it's very crazy. Other than that, I'm trying to think. What is it? The third book of Game of Thrones is like a masterpiece. And it's one of the best books I've ever read, but it's the third book. Clash of Kings or Storm of Swords? One of those.
I think it's Storm of Swords.
I think it's Storm of Swords, but yeah. Yeah, I don't really read too many standalones because everybody's like, hey, here's a giant series.
Right? And so the giant series are kind of off-putting sometimes because it's like, do I really want to dedicate 2 years of my life to read through this thing?
Yeah.
So like if a series is between like 3 and 5 books, then that's like bread and butter because you get to really spend time with the characters but not overstay their welcome.
Yeah.
Because I think like Wheel of Time series, most people would agree, like if you cut out 4 books, like it would be awesome. Because like roughly 4 books are
basically 7 to 10.
Right. I mean, 9. The end of 9 is great.
Yeah, like there's stuff you could keep and just put into another book, but yeah.
Yeah, essentially, a lot of those books ended up being Witcher quest. Like an entire book of Witcher side quests.
Yeah, they're much better on a reread, but man, waiting for them to come out and getting like book 8, jeez.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine that. One of my favorite books, and it's not even a standalone, but I still think it's my favorite fantasy book by itself, and it could. I think it really could stand by itself, is Wizard's First Rule.
Oh, yeah. Good old Terry Goodkind.
And I didn't read anything else after that in that series, but I devoured that book in a weekend.
So the first 4 or 5 are pretty good. You can see the derivatives and some of the stuff he takes from Mike Jordan and stuff, but they're fun. But the first book's good. I like the first book.
Yeah, the first book was really good.
Yeah, it starts to go downhill pretty quick.
All right, so
Next book's good too.
Let's switch from books now, and let's talk about Dungeons and Dragons, or more importantly, just generic tabletop RPGs.
All right.
So you've been DMing or running a game with us that I've been a part of for
4 years?
What, 2 or 3 years now?
Yeah, something like that.
No,
because
longer than that. It's been about 4 years where you've been running something, and we've run three different campaigns and 3 different rule sets. We started off with a Blades in the Dark campaign, which we the players kind of ran into a kind of a place where we couldn't do anything more.
Yeah,
kind of.
kind of.
And then the next rule set we played through was Dungeon World.
Yeah, it's
And
very similar to Blades in the Dark rule-wise.
yeah. And then now we're playing a modified Dungeons and Dragons 5e campaign. So, I wanted to have you on and kind of talk about DMing and player, both of those point of views, because I've DM'd a little bit in my life. You have more experience at it now than I do now. And Mike, who unfortunately couldn't be with us today, he has not actually gotten to play any tabletop RPGs yet, although he says he's interested. So he's probably kind of like our friend Mishral, but hadn't joined the table yet. So
have you watched any D&D like Critical Role or Dimension 20 or anything like that?
have I, or has he?
Has he? Do you know?
I am not sure.
Okay.
I know I haven't. I tend to, not that I'm against it, but when I'm not playing D&D, it's like I'm either going to be reading jujitsu, working out, spending time with a family, playing video games.
It's understandable. Critical Role is long as hell. It took the pandemic and losing my job to get into it.
And that's a lot of free time. So
yeah, I was like, I guess I don't have anything to do for 10 hours. I'll play JRPGs and watch Critical Role.
Yeah, there's so much media in the world now. There's so many people just creating things.
Yeah.
And creating things just for the sake of creating things, it feels like. Yes, I understand the irony, although it's not exactly irony, it's a misuse of the word, but that we're on a podcast and I'm creating something just to have something out there. But yeah, it's better than just consuming things. Like if you're going through your life and all you're doing is consuming and you're not contributing, you're wasting a lot of your potential.
Yeah, I was just curious because while they're long, they are fairly good, if somewhat like exaggerated representations of D&D. If you needed like a visual to kind of understand it better.
Gotcha.
Check it. Okay. You can check and stuff.
All right. So my first question is, when did you first get started in playing tabletop RPGs?
So I actually got started fairly young. So my dad used to play like AD&D and stuff like that. So I played a little bit as a kid, not much though, like maybe a couple of sessions or like a one shot or something. And I think I played a little bit of like third edition, maybe like middle school or high school or something. But really, I played with you and Jason fourth edition. We got a decent campaign going for a little bit, but that kind of fell off.
We had two different 4E campaigns. We had a Dark Suns and a regular one.
Yeah, that was fun. And I got it back for a while. Maybe a year.
Yeah, it was like a year, but before that, I was running a 3.5E campaign at my apartment that you were part of.
God, I totally forgot about that.
Those all went downhill.
But I didn't know when.
Yeah, those all went downhill because we were all just drinking. I was drinking like.
Oh yeah.
I was drinking Jack and Coke while DMing, and it just
And then like 4 years ago or something. I don't know. I think
it's 5 or 6 at this point.
Yeah, 5 or 6. I can't remember whose idea it was. Maybe I don't know. We got with Jason and we did that. And so I've been watching like nerd stuff, and I saw some people playing Blaze in the Dark. So since we were kind of full up because I think our friend Chris was running a campaign, I started wanting to do Blaze in the Dark, and that's kind of how I got started.
And that's how you got started with DMing, right?
Yeah.
Okay. What's your favorite class to play in tabletop RPGs?
I'm just gonna go. So I haven't played too many since I've been DMing a lot. Been mainly DMing, but I still get to play like every other week. I played some melee and I played some spellcasters. I think I prefer spellcasters, and I'm really enjoying my support class I'm playing now, which is a Celestial Warlock. That one is really fun because I kind of like. Most people don't like healing; they find it boring or whatever. But I actually like in like computer games and stuff. I like the support classes, so that one's really fun right now. The Celestial Warlock.
Okay. And tied into that, what would be your favorite race to play? And how do you feel about races having innate modifiers and advantages and disadvantages compared to versus Wizards of the Coast's latest thing where they changed the rules for you to be able to choose which abilities you wanted to add for your race. So you no longer, like if you chose half work, you no longer had to stick with the plus and bonuses, strength and intelligence.
So not getting anything political. I think mechanically I prefer it to confer the bonuses and like you don't really get to pick. Just because it allows you to really one, it lets you either it lets you like kind of min max, like, oh, if I want to be like a brawly dude, I should, like a fighter, I should maybe be a half orc or something. But also you can go against class in a very weird way. You could be like, oh, I'm going to be a half orc, magic user or wizard or something, and that like actually gives you some cost to doing that. So you can play it up with the RP, which I think is better. So favorite race, ironically, just mechanically, is human because they get the very human feet. But I guess, I mean, everybody likes tieflings. I'm not a big fan of dwarves. I've never been, but probably be either human for the mechanic reason or tieflings because they also get bonuses to charisma, so you can be the talker if you want to do that.
Okay. And so for anybody listening that isn't familiar with tabletop RPGs or D&D specifically, so like the variant human class allows a human to take a feat at the first level, and a feat is just like a extra ability, and you have few chances to gain feats in D&D. So gaining one at first level can be super powerful, depending on which one you choose.
It lets you, if you're like pretty into the rule system, make builds that can actually happen faster than like anything else, because you'll get one at first level and you'll get one at fourth level, so you can like actually, if you're nerdy like that. But if you don't really know mechanics all that well, just pick whatever you want for a new player.
And speaking of new players, Mike was wondering how do you start a new character when you're new? Like how to start a new character when you're new? And I'm gonna guess that was kind of confusing. Maybe not so much getting into the weeds of like creating a character, but like how do you go about thinking up a character concept?
Okay, so everyone's different, of course. Me, I tend to go mechanics first. So I go, what would be fun to play? So I pick the class first. Then I usually pick the race, either that will complement it or be a twist on it. Like I had an artificer because I wanted to play an alchemist. And I was like, oh, it'd be fun to be like a little goblin guy, so I made him a goblin. And then after that, I don't really. It depends. Like if the DM wants a backstory, I'll spend a little bit of time, maybe a couple of sentences, maybe a couple of names for like, I don't know, my friend or whatever. If he doesn't require a backstory, I will generally not make one because it won't be used. And then you kind of just think of like, maybe you don't even have to think, but like in play, like if you get like a weird quirk, you kind of just run with it. That's kind of how I do it. I don't really have too many like definites. I'll have some like in my back of my mind, but they won't be like written down. If that makes sense.
Okay. And so connected to that, do you have any tips for creating a backstory or a character concept? And is it okay to use characters from your favorite book, movie, or video games as a basis for that, or is that tacky?
No, I would definitely use characters from popular media, characters you like, because you want to play a character that you like, and that's cool. And so like the thing is like you give yourself room to like twist it, or like if you're gonna do like a Batman type, you don't want to your character's not gonna be named Bruce Wayne or what, you know what I mean? But so you don't want to direct rip off, but you can have inspiration. So you could be like, I'm like Luke Skywalker, but I like to eat like Goku if you like both of them, and like then you kind of go from there. So then he's like kind of a goody two shoes guy, but maybe as you play on, he's like actually kind of an asshole. So it will twist, but like you can use a base concept, or you can just use archetypes like I'm I'm like a heart of gold paladin, and like you just kind of play it like that, and then like will twist. Usually for backstories, you don't want to do too much because, well, first off, you need to know if your DM's going to use it or not. If your DM's going to use it, I would do like a paragraph. Mainly, you want to do stuff that the DM can use, like your arch rival. You give them a name, your parents or your friends or a lover or something like that. People that can like show up during the campaign, and then maybe like a brief, like I went to this college, and then like I got betrayed, blah, 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 blah. You want to keep it fairly light so you can fill in stuff with your DM later. That's kind of how I like to do it.
Okay, and with that, having character concepts, I know, so my two current characters, they probably have more flavor and flair than any of the other characters I've ever played. And my decision for doing that, so the one in your campaign is a undead warlock who lost his family, or sorry, lost all of his children to a disease. In researching that disease, ostracized his wife, or alienated his wife, and his wife left him. He found a book, devoted himself to this patron, and is still attempting to research ways to bring back his children, whatever method that may be. And then the other character that I have is a gnome artificer who created a guild called the Chromatic Chalk Rites, and his magic is brought to life by chalk, sidewalk chalk art. And that idea I actually got from a book by Brandon Sanderson called The Rhythmatists. So like in that, think they draw chalklings on the ground, and then they come to life, and they kind of like do a like a Bakugan or a Pokemon style card game battle. And so like that's the idea in the book. So yeah. I took the chalk art idea from the book, and so like right now my slate for drawing is my shield, and then I've got a little wand that holds the chalk, and so in battle he draws. And so my reasoning for trying to come up with some little more flavor with here is because I was having trouble role playing, and it was a combination of me having to remember or think about how my character that I designed would react in this and within their alignment. And then because there's so many more players at the table, trying to be, not necessarily trying to be the first one to come up with it, but come up with an answer or a path before somebody else cemented the path for the party.
Yeah.
Because that would happen to me a lot. I'd be like, all right, what would I do? What would I do? And I'm thinking about it. And then I'm like, oh, I hear. And then it's like, all right, so now we're moving on. I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in a way, it didn't let me play outside of that character's personality or what that character would do, but it limited my role playing in that. And so how as a DM, is it important for your player to really remember, like if you're a DM that requires a backstory or uses it, how important is it for the player to constantly remember that, bring that into play in the story, and do things consistently with like their backstory, their personality, their alignment?
Honestly, it's not that important. Obviously, if like you're a goody two shoes and you like just walk up and kill a kid or something, that's like totally out of character. But generally, like you're gonna be pretty decent. Most D&D characters are not good, but they'll act consistently enough to where it doesn't really matter. And the backstory stuff, you should like. That's why you need to keep it brief, and you're like, so you have a couple of like names or something that you remember, and then like if you hear that name, you can go like, oh shit, like it's that guy. So that's what's good about it. But yeah, generally alignment doesn't really matter. Like it doesn't matter at all. It's kind of a vestige from the old systems and stuff. Like most D&D characters are like chaotic neutral. It's just thing because people like doing fun stuff and they don't want to be bogged down by like, my character wouldn't do that. One thing
like
is
a code of conduct or something.
Yeah.
Like it really railroads you into your decision making.
It's like in real life, morality of a lot of people is very fluid, and like the situation can be really weird. So yeah, I wouldn't worry about alignment. It's a good like little starter thing to be like, I'm generally act this way, but of course if like something crazy happens, I would break it or whatever, but it wouldn't. Don't worry about that for your character. And yeah, keep your backstory short. Think of put the stuff in there you think will like be like an oh shit moment if it comes up, and you'll generally be fine.
Okay. And so in general with I know our last session with yours, it was 100% role play. There were no encounters.
Yeah.
But I know the session before, it was a large encounter that we had.
Yeah.
Kind of the end of an arc on our campaign, and then the next one was just dealing with the aftermath and then traveling for the next. How do you balance role playing and action sessions, encounter sessions, and it obviously it depends on your players and what they want. But as a DM, and like, how important of a balance do you, as a DM, think it is?
It's very important. It's very hard. It's something you have to feel out. In general, you want, if your players like combat, most players love combat because that's where a lot of their cool abilities are. You want to have one at least probably every other session, or more than that. But if you have too much combat, then it just kind of gets bogged down. So you have to break it up with role play, things like that. Also, a good tip for any of your DMs out there: combat in 5e takes forever. So if you're a little light on your prep, you throw in some bandits attacking a thing or something like that, and you'll get through that 3-hour session. Because if you're a little light, you have a little encounter in your back pocket, you're pretty good. But generally you want a mixture of both for each session. But the huge encounters, that will take up at least a session, maybe more. And yeah, but you definitely have to strike a balance, and it's hard. And it will also depend on the story. If you're in a dungeon or something, you'll probably have way more combat encounters. But then once you get out of that dungeon, you should probably have maybe 1 or 2 sessions of RP.
Okay, and do you feel most players focus on skills, spells, feats, traits that assist in combat, and kind of neglect the role play aspect and things that give advantages in role play?
Yes, because unfortunately, Dungeons and Dragons is like a combat system. Almost all and for people that were bagging on 4e about it, 5e is the same thing. There's a little bit of outside role play skills and stuff, but for the most part, it's about how your characters kick ass. One thing you can try to do is encourage your players to flavor the skills so that in combat they're RPing a little bit with what they're a lot of things is just hey, what does that look like, and that would just make their juices flow. You can do that with basically any skill to kind of get their RP-ness going, and you can try to encourage creative use of stuff, but in general it's hard because just a lot of stuff is just hey, I'm dealing a bunch more damage, and that's cool. So it's tricky, but yeah, you'll definitely prioritize combat. I mean, I do when I play.
Yeah, I do the same, and also kind of feel like most campaigns, the reward is experience from combat. So
yeah,
rarely, and it's easier to award experience, especially if you're per encounter, where you look at the monsters that they fight, and the monster handbook lists the experience per monster. So then you divvy it up and say, hey, this is what you got, versus here was an awesome role play session, and you duped the mayor into letting you marry his daughter.
Yeah. I will say that's why I will always do milestone experience instead of just the traditional XP, because it will encourage role playing and stuff either way, and everybody levels at the same time, so you don't have weird things one party member is at 1 level ahead. It's just much easier to do it like that. And
or even 3 levels ahead.
Yeah. That helps pace out your campaign. Usually, and then they know after a big encounter, usually they'll level up, depending.
Okay. What is the rule of cool?
So the rule of cool is basically a term for your player wants to do something that is quote unquote outside the rules, and you kind of allow it, but with maybe some consequences or a heavy dice roll. Like, okay, but you need like to get a natural 20 or something like that. And if they do it, then they get to do the cool thing.
I like what it was in Blades of the Dark where it was a devil's bargain.
Yeah, those are fun.
Yeah, that was really fun. It's like you just get to do this, but
Yeah.
or no,
One
no, it
problem-
was you have a chance to do it, but this consequence will happen regardless if you succeed or not.
Yeah. One thing that about those is they're really cool, but they can be difficult to come up on the fly. So I started like writing potential ones up beforehand so I could like reference to. But yeah, they're fun.
So Mike wants to know, can you run more than one character at a time?
In like a single D&D session?
Yes.
Yeah, you can. It's not preferable just because, well, I guess depends on how many people you have. If it's just you and like the DM, you could run a full party and you just be talking to yourself, which is fine. But I mean, you could to flesh out the like roster, I guess. But in general, you're probably going to then have a favorite, and you're going to like RP with that one, and it's kind of pointless per se because the DM can tailor the challenge to the amount of party members. So I would probably just recommend one character, but you could do it.
In like, I mean, one situation where you would want to do it is if for some reason, like, and this happens sometimes, where all the players are like, I want to play this, and then you end up with no healers, or you end up with like no tanks, no melee fighters, or something like that. So that might be a situation where you would want to do it, but I think as a DM, you'd be like, oh, hey, here's an NPC that can follow along with you.
Hey, you could do it, or like in our current campaign, y'all don't have a dedicated healer, so I've been like throwing healing potions at y'all.
I don't think I've ever used one. I think I have an
I've
inventory.
given y'all so many healing potions. Like that's a way I could mitigate your lack of healing, because as a DM, you want your party members to get close to death, and maybe one of them die every once in a while, but you don't want like a total party wipe or anything like that. You want the hint of danger, but not the actual danger.
Hey, Jason might differ in opinion there.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a more hardcore DM, but in my experience, with one of the ways Blades in the Dark died is because like 3 or 4 of the original party members died, and then like you have to bring in a new guy, and then like they have to establish relationships with the old characters, and it doesn't feel the same, and it just kind of like that. It's kind of like the original Power Rangers. They keep losing members until like what the last member was Billy, and it's like not the same, and like you what.
How did Billy end up being the last? Oh, we lost you for a second.
Yeah, I got a phone call. Sorry.
How did Billy end up being the last Power Ranger?
I don't know. I just remember he was.
Out of all of them, just the nerdy science guy.
He's there for a while.
Oh yeah, I mean he was there in the first episode, so.
Yeah, but like he lasts. I'm pretty sure he lasts the longest. Come up on my Power Rangers lore.
Mike has a few more questions here. So, one, how much experience do you need to be a DM? We already answered the question of when did you first DM, which is approximately 4 years ago. And so, yeah, let's go ahead and answer that one. How much experience do you think you need to be a DM?
So the obvious answer is 0, because all DMs have 0 experience until they do it. But I think you need to be prepared enough. You need to know the base rules of the game, whichever system you're using. I would recommend watching some like Critical Role and stuff, not to like psych yourself out of, oh my god, I can't do voices, because you don't need to do voices, you don't need to do anything crazy like that. You just need to get kind of like, once you can visualize it, it would be easier. And then you kind of just have to do it and fuck up and do it again and then see what works. Figure out your method of prep, how much you need, what you can like improvise on the fly, what you actually need written down. Figuring out how to do all that stuff. It takes time, unfortunately. Like, I probably wasn't that good when I started. Nobody's that great when they start. So yeah, you just have to kind of just do it. And also, like, if you want to do it, do it. It's a lot of fun. It really is. It's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I enjoy it, but the reason why I haven't in a while is just because it is a lot of work, and it's a lot of constant work.
Yeah.
And then you can prep a whole lot of stuff, and then your players are just like, nah, that's not what we're doing.
Yeah. That's why you have to prep the rest stuff, and that's what takes time and experience, like learning what you actually need to prep. And it's different for everybody.
How do you? What are some ways you stay organized during a campaign? Can be as a player standpoint or a DM standpoint. I know there's going to be overlap as well.
Yeah. So I'll say, player wise, I generally do nothing. I kind of it's the fun part of being a player. I kind of just show up, have the fun session, maybe write down a name or two, and then kind of just remember. I have pretty good memory, so I can like generally remember what happened in the session, but for the most part, I don't really do anything. As a DM, first off, I write all my sessions like Google Docs. I print them out, so I have physical copies, so I can make like basic notes on the page as we're going. Like if I improvise a name that might need to be remembered, write that down. And then like I kind of have a separate Google Doc of like kind of where I think the campaign's gonna go, and like maybe a rough plan of like 2 to 3 sessions in advance, because you don't want to prep. You don't want to think too much about the grand scheme of things, because it might not happen, because as you said, players are crazy and they'll go a different way. So you want general rough idea of like kind of where the story's going, but not like, you don't want definite stuff until you get there.
Okay. Yeah, I know we've like Caleb comes to mind specifically. He'll take a lot of notes. It's almost like he's a bard.
Yeah.
Writing down, and it's great because if we ever have a question as a group, like, hey, when did that happen, or who was that? He just turns a few pages back and is like, oh, this. And sometimes I'm amazed at how much I don't remember.
Yeah, like it's nice, but also you can kind of flub it if you don't remember as a DM. You're just like, oh yeah, like this guy was from like this past session or whatever, and that may or may not be true, but like you can kind of flub it in the background if you need to.
With that, how do you feel about making players remember specific names or things and recall it correctly for puzzle solving or plot?
So I will say I generally don't do puzzles, just because I think would be bad at making them, and I don't find them be super fun while playing. So I generally don't do puzzles, but if somebody's good at puzzle making, then it'd probably be really fun. And I would say you don't really want people to remember stuff, because they're just not going to do it for the most part. Like, you can't count on them to do it, but you can remind them. And then, like, that's what I like to do. Like, I really like doing, I think everybody should do like a recap at the start of the session. Just remind people everything what happened. If something important happens, you should like be like, hey, that's the name of the mayor from blah blah blah. Like, just in my experience, people have a lot of things to do in their life, so they just and D&D won't be the priority, so they will need to remember stuff, and you should remind them. You shouldn't hold it against them. It might be a little annoying sometimes if like, oh, that was your brother, you shouldn't remember his name, but just give them the hint and move on. It's not that big of a deal.
So what about a situation where it's like, here's this contraption, and then they list off like there's 3 levers and 2 buttons, and like somebody's giving you instruction on how to do it and what each thing does, and then you go to use it and they're not around, and it's like, all right, I want to lift the arm, and the DM's like, what lever or button are you pressing? And they pick the wrong one and deal with the consequence. What about situations like that?
I would say if you're gonna do that as a DM, it should be written out on paper that you can give to them. Like, the red button blows up, and then like they press the red button. If you're just telling it to them, they're not gonna like remember that stuff. They're gonna be like, okay, they're gonna assume that you're gonna be able to like either roll a dice to recall, or like they're gonna be like, I do the thing, and it's like actually not a thing. So that's the only time I would do that, but I would give them like written things, and then I would warn them. I'd be like, hey, this is the instructions. Like, if you fuck up, you're gonna face the consequences. But in general, people are gonna be like, oh, I got the DM as a safety blanket, so I wouldn't do that out of nowhere.
Were you there when we played? Was it Paranoia? It was.
Yeah. So that was the game. That was like the purpose of the game. But if you're doing like a D&D session, yeah, and that was fun, and that was also a one-off, so it didn't really matter that much. But if you're gonna do it in a campaign setting like D&D, that's how I would do it.
That was the one where everybody we woke up when we were in a certain color and we had access to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was like dystopian, and then like basically we all died before we even got to the mission. That game's kind of crazy.
I want to play that game again. It was fun.
Yeah, but like Jason just like showed up real quick. He's like, "This is your instruction," and he put it down, and we're like, "Huh?" And then like that was like the type of game it was, so that's fine.
Yeah. Where am I in my questions? Okay. What are some ways that DMs and players can help a player get more involved if it seems like they're shy or not as quick to the draw in the role-playing parts?
Yeah, it's very hard. It's something I struggle with because sometimes the player is like fine with just showing up, rolling some dice, killing some stuff. That's fine. I mean, that's fun. Like our friend Jason, like he'll roleplay every once in a while, but in general, like I don't have to worry about him roleplaying if he doesn't want to. He just does his own thing, kind of thing. So you have to first figure out if like it's a problem or not. If it is a problem, ways you can do it is look at their background, like do stuff that involves them, that they're basically forced to role play or to speak up, whether that's the background stuff like their mom shows up, or if it's like mechanic stuff, like if they're a wizard and there's like a arcane trap that they would have to actually engage with. That's kind of how as a DM you can kind of do it. You can also kind of call upon them. You don't want to do it that often, but you can do it. So like you could be like, hey, Bob, you see that there's a trap here or something like that. You can actually like just give them information that the rest of the people don't have. Do that sometimes. As a player, the best thing to do would be to like just ask the character questions. So you'd be like, man, should we go into that dungeon? And then like have them answer you. So just like ask them questions and like maybe like if like you're doing like a you're a fire and you're like on watch, like go on watch with them and maybe like I don't know, ask them about something. But you kind of just have to like ask them about something and see if they want to engage. If they don't want to engage, they just want to kill goblins with fireballs and stuff. That's perfectly fine. I will say as a DM, at a certain point, if you recognize that they're not going to do it, you stop prepping stuff for them because you know it's not really fruitful. So you just have to kind of just prod them.
And I think I think two things actually help along with that. One is something that can be achieved with any rule set, where your players beforehand, two players can get together and say, "Hey, our characters know each other, and this is their relationship." And so, if they have that relationship, then they can go into things together almost. With a background, and they can come up, like if something pops up, they're like, oh yeah, we used to do blah 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 together, and so that's how we're able to do this. And another one is like the bond system that you pulled over from Dungeon World, and that kind of forces or encourages, not necessarily force because you don't have to do it if you want to, but it encourages the player interaction.
Yeah. And you also need to like to the environment. So like having somebody you might want to, or you could do the stuff like if they were started role playing and you do the critical role method of like they kill something like, oh man, how did you do it? And you're like, and like then they explain how they killed the bad guy, or like you're like, oh, how does your firewall look? And then you can, as a DM, you can kind of take their thing and embellish it a little bit and like, make them feel like they're contributing instead of just like rolling dice. That's another way. It is pretty in the moment recognizing people that haven't spoken that much because you have so much stuff going on. But you can on after the sessions and see like, oh, that guy basically didn't talk to her. And you can kind of hopefully try to correct it if needed.
Yeah, I'm experiencing a little bit of audio and video issues at the moment, but it's not terrible. I have a few more questions though. What is your favorite rule set for tabletop RPGs?
I really like Dungeon World. It's very simple, very easy to prep, and it was a lot of fun. But you have to know your players if they're going to be receptive to the more RP aspect of it. And 5e is fun because it's really easy, and generally most people are going to have an idea about how it flows and stuff if they know the rules. Because all video games are like based on D&D and like Baldur's Gate 3's out and stuff like that. So it's easy, it's fun, and it has more of the tactical combat. Combat's a little weak in 5e, but it has more than like Dungeon World. So I'd pick those two. Like Dungeon World if you're going for more RP, and D&D if you're going for all around.
Okay. Specific question here for you. You've done this a couple of times with all three of the different campaigns you've run. I believe all three. If not, just it was at least Dungeon World in this current campaign,
Yeah,
which is your hybrid board game RPG rule set that you've used for some of the large scale battles.
Yeah.
Can you kind of talk through some of that in the process you did with coming up with it and running it? Because I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's fun. So basically, most RPG settings and like in rule sets and stuff are not really equipped to handle large scale combat because it's you're high adventurous, but at a lot of certain points, you can get to like, you know, being in charge of a city or blah 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 blah. There probably is some systems out there that you can map stuff to, but I just wanted something really simple, and so I crafted on the basically like really simple like meet it beat it types roles to um like a map and like from the units, like the bad guys and like kind of the good guys had their supposedly like they had um friendly relations with like the fighters, you know, they have fighters and stuff like that. And then you kind of just it has rules you kind of can in the moment disregard them when cool stuff happens because it's mainly just a vehicle for like cool large scale battles that happen. And we want the big thing is like so I don't know explain, but basically you have your like the good guy units and it'll be like a unit or like archers or something like that. And then you'll have the bad guy, which would be like, you know, a group of orcs or whatever. When the end of their turn, they'll pick a unit. So they'll be like, all right, I'm adding the counter unit to attack the bad guy. And you and then whatever happens, but you rate like how you're helping fight the unit. So it like it's very cinematic, kind of uh Battle of Home Secret Mysterious type large scale combat. And it gives you and what I also do is like you have it so like where mathematically the bad guys would win unless the heroes did. So they're the deciding factors in the combat. So so yeah, then you kind of like play it out. You have all these different scenarios of like winning conditions and stuff like that. You just kind of like feel it out during, but it's fun. And it's another example like with RPGs, you can like kind of do whatever you want. Like if you get a cool idea, just kind of try it out. And like if the rules don't work, you just kind of like either change them on the fly or like fix it somehow. But like if you have a cool idea, try it.
Okay. And Mike has one more question, which is, how would you go about finding places to play for the first time?
Yes, with the kind of proliferation of D&D content like Critical Role and Dominion, there's probably people at your work that have watched it or might be interested. So you do social groups. You could check out your uh, like local game store, see if they have groups going on. Most people there are pretty nice, probably. You know, I do know like a lot of online D&D now. There's probably forums and stuff you could do. I will say, online D&D is not as good, but if it's your only D&D, it's probably better. Because we did it during COVID and it was markedly worse. You just missed that in-person aspect of it. So those are the avenues we're checking out. See if your friends want to do it. Unfortunately, if you're the person that's interested in it and you're trying to get your friends into it, you're the one that's going to have to DM. So take up that burden. It is hard, but I find it funner than actually playing because you're just like always on doing stuff. But just know you will probably want to DM it if you like trying to commit your friends to it.
Okay. Well, that's all of our questions, and the audio is kind of starting to cut out a good bit more. So, one last question is, can you give us a book recommendation to read through? I know we took the In Conquest Born recommendation, but do you have one more for us?
Um, since the movie's coming out, or the second movie's coming out, I definitely recommend. Dune's really good. Um, the rest of the series, like, a lot of people just stuck with Dune, but like the rest of the series is very good so far. I haven't finished it. I'm on like the fifth or sixth one, but I definitely recommend reading Dune if you're excited for the movie.
Okay, yeah, I enjoyed the first part, and also watched the old David Lynch one as well.
At the all that craziness in the table. Shit.
Bless you. All right. Well, thank you for spending the time with me today, and it was a lot of fun. Got to learn more about your process of DMing, and hopefully anybody listening, especially Mike, when he gets to listen to this, he kind of understands D&D a little bit more, and maybe he picks up the mantle of DM and experiences D&D for his first time.
Yeah, like, you might not think you can do it. Like, don't get intimidated that you have to do like voices, crazy stuff. If you need to do a module, do a module, or if you just want to like go off cuff, go off cuff. It is intimidating, but once you get the hang of it, it's not that hard. And also, you kind of want to do it, just do it. Like, you're never gonna be like quote unquote ready for it, because you just have to just do it if you want to do it.
Okay. Well, thank you for the time, Justin, and we will see each other later this week.
Yep.
All right. You have a great evening.
You too.